So I just saw a video on Instagram of a white guy who spent, as far as I know, the first 8 years of his life in Pakistan and then moved back to the UK, which is where he originates from. I don't know much about him. I've just seen this one video and like a part of another video of his. But I do want to address what he said in this video because there are some claims he made that are either false or involve analyses that are just not plausible or not correct. Before doing that though, I want to mention that as a fellow gay Pakistani, I'm glad that he's gay and that he's out and that he's speaking in favor of the LGBT community because of course that's something that really needs to be said, so I wanted to express my solidarity toward him and other LGBT people in the country.
Pakistan's always been trans, so why is being gay illegal? Meet the hijras, a legally recognized third gender in Pakistan. These individuals fall under the umbrella term of khawaja, sera.
So the first thing is that hijra does not fall under the umbrella of khawaja sera. Hijra is older than khawaja sera. Khawaja sera is something that originated in the Mughal era. It includes some elements of Islamic eunuch culture that exist also in places like Turkey, and it also includes some other elements and its own new things that came into existence over time. And there are elements of hijra culture combined with that. So there is a certain overlap between hijra and khawaja sera. There are hijra people that are also khawaja sera, but to say that hijra is a subcategory of khawaja sera is not correct.
Which means transgender or intersex individuals.
Khawaja sera does not mean transgender or intersex. Trans people who are not in the khawaja sera community also exist. Trans men, for example, are not actually included within the khawaja sera community, and even some trans women are not part of the khawaja sera community. Historically, some of the people within the khawaja sera community have also not been trans. Historically, this is not the case anymore, but historically there have been some cis men also who were included in the khawaja sera community. These are people who had been castrated, and they are often castrated without their consent. For example, they are slaves who have been castrated by their masters.
Growing up in Pakistan, we saw these individuals everywhere, and I guess they were my first sort of exposure to like the queer community or even an aspect of drag. So why are transgender people accepted in Pakistan but not homosexuality? Pakistan differentiate between gender variances and sexual orientation. They see a gender variance as your identity. That's how you're made, that's who you are. However, sexual orientation is more behavioral based.
Now this is the biggest point of disagreement I have with this video. I have nothing against this guy personally, but this analysis is just totally wrong and is out of touch with the reality of the mainstream values and culture of Pakistan. Pakistan is a highly socially conservative and Islamic society. It is also politically Islamist, meaning Sharia in the standard interpretation is implemented to a certain degree at the level of the state and at the level of generally how society is organized. So both formally and informally, Sharia is implemented in Pakistan to a reasonably high degree. Not completely, thank God, because most of Sharia is bad on the standard interpretation, but to a reasonably high degree. That is the root of the problem. It's not because of the fact that they're okay with gender variance, which they just see as part of your identity, unlike sexual orientation, which weirdly they don't see as part of your identity. They know perfectly well that sexual orientation is also an aspect of people's personality. Not to mention, they're actually not fine with trans people. This is not a trans-inclusive society at all. It's a highly transphobic society, especially against the Khawaja Sera community, but also against non-Khawaja Sera trans people. If you listen to the things that people say and look at the actual outcomes of trans people, it's really bad. Your average cis person does not accept being trans at all. They are trying to criminalize trans identity. They're trying to make it so that even the most basic legal recognition for trans people does not exist.
But guess where India and Pakistan got that idea from? The British.
The British never perpetuated the idea that gender variance is who you are, or your gender identity is who you are, whereas your sexual orientation is just a matter of behavior and therefore wrong. If it was a matter of behavior, heterosexuality would also be a matter of behavior. It doesn't explain why homosexuality specifically is seen as wrong. I didn't mention this earlier, but this is actually relevant to my previous point. It doesn't explain the origin of homophobia, because even if you were to define sexual orientation purely behaviorally, or maybe a better way of putting it is, even if you were to disregard the reality of sexual orientation and only talk in terms of sexual behavior, which is unbelievably idiotic and scientifically illiterate, but even if you were to do that, that still doesn't explain why you see the homosexual behavior specifically as wrong, but the heterosexual behavior as acceptable, or at least the heterosexual behavior as acceptable if it's within marriage or something like that.
Same-sex activity is illegal in Pakistan due to the colonial era law.
Section 377 does not say this. It does not criminalize same-sex sexual activity. I have explained that in a blog post that I will link in the description. It criminalizes heterosexual and homosexual anal sex and heterosexual and homosexual fellatio. Another reason this explanation doesn't work is that the British also criminalized hijra identity in the form of the Criminal Tribes Act, which the Pakistani and Indian government repealed fairly shortly after partition or after independence. That law directly targets hijra identity, whereas Section 377 does not directly target gay identity. So it can't be that homophobia in Pakistan has its roots in British laws, and that explains why there isn't as much transphobia. Not only is there actually a lot of transphobia, but also there are also laws criminalizing trans people, or at least a subset of the trans community.
India copied and pasted it first, and then after partition in 1947, Pakistan copy and pasted that right across.
Now, I don't know exactly what this means. Is India copy-pasted it, then Pakistan copy-pasted it? I mean, based on the plain meaning of what you're saying, that's just false. This was something imposed pre-partition on us by the British. We didn't copy-paste it. We didn't do anything about it. It was forced on us. Section 377 exists in countries outside of South Asia as well, or existed in countries outside of South Asia, such as Singapore and Malaysia. But the countries that don't have a Muslim majority and are not Islamic states are the ones that have generally repealed their Section 377. The countries with a Muslim majority and that are Islamic states have generally maintained their Section 377, because Islamic ideology is what is at the root of the problem here, specifically political Islamist ideology, which is enshrined in Pakistan's constitution. That is where the problem comes from, not from the British, and not from the fact that being gay is not considered to exist, or people think of sexuality purely in terms of behavior rather than identity. The real reason that there is more acceptance, to whatever limited cultural extent there is, of khawaja sera compared to LGBT or compared to any other queer identity is not because transness is accepted or because Pakistan is not a transphobic society. It definitely is. It's because of historical circumstances that have resulted in an irrational and incoherent attitude toward these things. Because hijra and khawaja sera both predate the origin of political Islamism in South Asia. Before you had movements to implement Sharia at the level of the state and at the level of society, which is what political Islamism refers to, before that you already had hijra and khawaja sera. There is no equivalent culture for gay men, lesbians, bisexual people, or any other queer identity that predates the rise of political Islamism in South Asia. This is why a lot of people in the mainstream of Pakistan, a lot of your average Muslim people in Pakistan believe, or at least say, that khawaja sera people are intersex. Now, they have no evidence that khawaja sera people are all intersex. There are intersex people that are not trans. There are also trans people that are not intersex, and there are khawaja sera people that are not intersex. But they've made up this story as a rationalization in order to alleviate their cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a feeling of distress that one gets when one realizes there's an inconsistency in one's views, or an inconsistency between one's views and one's actions. Now, the opinion that trans people are not acceptable or that trans identity is something bad contradicts the acceptance of khawaja sera community. So in order to make it seem as if there is no inconsistency, they tell themselves that the khawaja sera community is not in fact a community of trans people, but instead a community of intersex people. Of course, the acceptance of intersex and not trans and not queer doesn't make any sense at all. There are intersex people that are trans, there are intersex people that are gay or bi, but these people are not capable of rational thought. They think that because intersex is something that you are clearly born with. I mean, of course, people are also born with these other characteristics in many cases, but in the case of intersex, it's a physical thing that you can clearly see and measure, and so you can say, well, they have no choice in the matter. It's not something that's under their control. People don't have a choice about being gay either. People don't have a choice about being trans either. But your actions and your agency are more relevant in the latter cases than in the case of being intersex, where there's absolutely no role for any element of your own will when it comes to your being intersex. So they've convinced themselves that the khawaja sera community is actually just intersex in order to rationalize their intuitive or instinctive acceptance of them, when in fact that acceptance is not rooted in the actual belief that they're intersex. The belief is a rationalization of it rather than it being rooted in that belief. Pakistani society generally is exceedingly stupid, ignorant, and irrational. That's just a fact. I don't care if this makes racist people feel validated or whatever. I mean, I do care in that I don't want them to feel validated, but the fact that racist people might use this in a bad way doesn't change the fact that it's true. And we're not going to be able to address any of these issues. We're not going to be able to address homophobia, transphobia, and even the oppression of the khawaja sera community unless we deal with the underlying problem, which is political Islamism, which is even Islam, at least on a standard interpretation. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't progressive versions of Islam or interpretations, there are, but on the standard interpretation, it's something very seriously problematic. Unless there is a push for secularism, for the acceptance of a public reason type of view, without that, there is no chance whatsoever. Simply blaming the British wrongly is not going to fix this at all.
Pakistan's Google search traffic, by sheer volume, is the world-leading country for Google search terms regarding gay pornography.
I've heard this gay pornography thing before. It's a point that gets brought up a lot, especially from queer Pakistani people. And I understand why it is that they want to say it. I don't think it's nearly as relevant or interesting as it's treated. So first of all, there's multiple reasons why someone might look up gay male pornography. Reasons other than that individual themselves being a same-sex attracted man. Contrary to what certain people have been saying lately, the majority of men in Pakistan are not gay or bi. It's not even close to a majority, and it's certainly not 100%. It would be very weird if that were true, because Pakistanis are humans like everyone else, and this is something that's just part of human nature. Why would it be different in Pakistan? Is there something in the air in Pakistan, something in the water that's turning the men specifically, not the women, but the men specifically gay or same-sex attracted? I mean, it's completely ridiculous. So people might be looking up gay male pornography because they're gay or bisexual men, which some of them certainly are. But I'm certain that there are also straight people who are looking up gay male pornography. Straight women, for example, frequently like gay male pornography. You have genres of media or content that are gay themed or lesbian themed that have a major straight audience. For example, in East Asia, there's a genre of content called boys love. I like some of the boys love stuff. I actually like the Western boys love. Heartstopper is an example of Western boys love. But anyway, it's romantic, basically romantic stuff involving men. Girls love is romantic stuff involving women. And the main audience for boys love are straight women. So it's entirely possible that straight women and even some straight men are looking up gay male pornography. And also lesbians, by the way, do like gay male pornography, generally speaking. In fact, many lesbians actually prefer gay male pornography to lesbian pornography, which makes perfect sense considering how bad quality a lot of lesbian pornography is. And there are certain other reasons behind it, but quality is certainly part of it. Gay male pornography is generally the best kind of pornography that exists. And so it's not surprising that a lot of people would want to look up gay male pornography, including straight people. Or I should say, including non-same-sex attracted men. So that includes straight people and lesbians. Straight men might also be looking up gay male pornography under some circumstances. For example, they might be looking it up out of curiosity. We don't know exactly what people's motives are, and making inferences about how many gay men exist just from the searches for gay male pornography is not good methodology whatsoever.
It unfortunately tells us one very heartbreaking thing, that the homophobic hate that I receive from individuals in South Asia who are utilizing the religion as an excuse to show that hatred are they themselves broken and resentful to anyone that they don't even realize they wish they could be.
They're not all using their religion to rationalize hatred. Religion is actually motivating the hatred. Religion is actually partially responsible for the homophobia in the first place, not just providing people with a discourse or a way to express it or an excuse to express it. Now, are some of these people same-sex attracted individuals with internalized homophobia? For example, gay men with internalized homophobia? I'm certain that that is true. There is evidence that gay people with internalized homophobia often do lash out at others, but that's definitely a minority. Most homophobia that I've encountered in my life has not been from gay people. It's from people that I'm certain are straight, and they're definitely religiously motivated. We can't just speculate and certainly not infer on the basis of some spurious study about search results for gay male pornography from Pakistan that these homophobic individuals are all or even mostly repressed homosexuals or bisexuals. Even this whole Grindr crashes every time there's a Republican convention thing has been seriously challenged. It's methodologically very flawed. For example, people will say, well, when you have a Republican convention in the US, then you have a lot of people using Grindr. But that's because there's an increase in the population. And when you have an increase in population, then the extent to which people use dating apps increases in general anyway. Kalen Conrad, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but in any case, he is a YouTuber I follow who's also gay, and he's done a pretty good takedown on this idea that homophobia is mainly internalized issues, or that most homophobic people are dealing with same-sex attraction or whatever.
You're queer in Pakistani, if you're queer in South Asian, you are valid, you are loved. Protect the dolls, trans rights, JK Rowling, jump off a fucking bridge.
I agree with all of that, and also want to extend my solidarity to LGBT people in Pakistan and around the world. And it's not just JK Rowling that needs to jump off a bridge, but also these Pakistani right-wingers, Maria Buttface and Orya Maqbool Jam and Senator Mushtaq Ahmed, etc. Okay, bye.